water fountains. Remember we were talking about New York City payphones. It used to be a multi-million-dollar piece of revenue for the city. It was something we were all happy to pay for, right? Drop a dime is a saying that we probably still use. And it was a utility that I was willing to pay for, that after they went away, we turned into digital kiosks that really don't provide any utility to the community, except for showing ads, maybe PSAs and some social goods, some wayfinding, but does that provide as much utility as a payphone did? Probably not. Right? Charging connectivity, how do we get 5G and stable connections in big city environments? That seems like a more important, especially from an ad publisher. If I'm going to show you my billboard, I want you to be able to get to the website after you see it. So thinking more about the actual challenges that we have. I live in the suburbs, so when I travel into the city, I got to make sure. I lost my phone earlier, which turned into a big thing in itself, but I always got to charge it, right? I've always got to charge it at some point. Where am I charging it? I'm trying to get back to Port Authority with 5% left, so I can plug it in. I could use a ChargeFuze, but you know what I could use? I could use a bus shelter that had wireless charging.
Let me get to that.
I would love that.
Okay, let's get that. So, okay, let me switch. Let's talk a little bit here, because I'm no longer at the company, but it's one of the great successes of my life, and I'm very, very proud of the work I did. And now, all of a sudden, after all these years, things are happening. Not these things; these are bad things. 18 people died.
But why? This I didn't know. Why did those, what was the actual problem?
So during COVID, everybody started delivering food in New York City and Chicago, right? A lot of these poor guys that come to this country, they're working really hard. There's nowhere for them to recharge their vehicles, and they fall on deaf ears, right? They're like, hey, we need to charge. So they give them extra batteries. Postmates and other people, I don't want to say they come to the companies, but here's a bicycle, here's some batteries, and whatever delivery company tells them, get to delivering food, right? They're going up and down the hill with 3 batteries in their backpack, and they're setting up these systems where 10 of them are being connected daisy chains to one plug, and they're all fire hazards, right? And a lot of them are taking the bicycle up to their apartment and charging all the batteries they need for the next day inside that apartment. And this is what happens. People get killed, there's fires, and they're very difficult to put out. So they got a $25 million grant. Last week there was another fire, but then again, all of a sudden, this thing that's been on hold for a long time just goes, which I'm really happy about. This is really, really good news for everybody. And SwiftMile is part of the new pilot that's listen to the word, pilot.
So this is the city of New York that's found the value in investing in doing a pilot to build this infrastructure to allow for universal charging.
Exactly. And
that's what he meant to say.
It's a pilot, and I actually think they should just go ahead and go full blown and just give free charging to everybody. Not in charge, but there's a couple of cool companies involved. We have SxSw from Germany, we have Pop Wheels, these are lockers. Battery swapping stations are very, very popular in Europe. Actually, somebody came to me last night, we spoke at the transportation hub. What's your name again? Nathan. Yes, we talked about Gogoro, which is a great example in Taiwan. I've seen them in person. They have urban density. There's one at every 7-Eleven, every other block, so you can just swap out your battery. But we don't have it in the US. So, and we have so many different plugs and so many different e-bikes and so many different units. So for me, cable, just like a Tesla or a car, tends to be the best way. So everybody can have their own universal cable or plug-in where they can plug in their bike. And that's why this one's the one in the middle, the SwiftMile, is actually getting a lot of usage right now. And I'm hoping it's a success. I'm hoping the pilot leads to real installations to avoid all these fires. But it led to some other conversations here. Companies like Jolt, which is a competitor to Volta, sorry, did I say Volta? What is it called now?
Shell.
Okay, there we go. Are now pitching the Jolt bike and Jolt car EV, so EV with bicycles, with micromobility. And last
to Albert's point, multimodal.
Yes, right? Multimodal. And a year and a half ago, I think it was 2 years ago, Vector Media with Transito won the proposal for 3,400 new shelters in Los Angeles, and we were part of that. I spoke in favor of that with the city council. It's the bus shelter of the future. This is the infrastructure that I really feel passionate about because it's got a solar charging for phones, it's got e-bike charging, bicycle charging, and you're keeping people outside of the sun because it's really hot when you're waiting for the bus. There's nothing worse than sitting out there waiting for the bus and they have no coverage. It's like these are the people that need something to sit under, and the people we care about less.
We should have included the originally proposed. Does everyone remember seeing that, like May of 2023, the proposed LA bus shelter that was like
It was a pilot.
a 2-foot awning with holes in it? Like, we need shade, but it didn't.
It looked cool, but this is the real thing. And
How-
I'm really proud of that as well.
We talked a little bit. I don't want to rain on the parade. Is this to me? All right, cool.
So this is you. How do we support this?
Okay, so how do we roll those out? That becomes my question. Is great. We've got approval. It's a great idea. How do we execute?
I'm going to go back to the money because
But I'm going to come to Albert's defense here because a cool idea with the monetization model of we'll make money through ads. I think it's just played out. How many cool ideas with we're going to monetize it through ads exist in the world? There's no shortage of them.
Of course.
And as a media buyer, right, you're trying to sort through all of these options to understand what's the best opportunity to make the highest impact impression with the audience in the moment that matters most in a way that's scalable to execute across these partners. So implementation, get that network rolled out, and then being able to buy it at scale. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a little piece of information that's missing in the entire configuration of the conversation. The first one is you have to look at what some of the solves are. I've heard that the one thing that would make us give up anything, in particular freedom, is safety. So what degree are those installations providing some level of safety, yes or no? I think the other thing is data. The fact that what level of intelligent information is being captured related to it, even if it's just fed to the city and not to a brand to necessarily exploit or do something else with. So all these things aren't part of the consideration of building this. Look, everyone treats all this like land. Digital advertising, out-of-home advertising, like this is land. It's important because people will see it. It's the same thing with the infrastructure of building a bus shelter in the future. It's land. But land has a multifaceted consideration. So there's no random opening of a Starbucks or a Target or a nail salon. It's well thought out with extensive geographic data, geoscape data, looking at neighborhoods, inflow, outflow, revenue, anchor stores, blah, blah, blah. What you find is when people do innovations like this, almost none of that is considered, even though all the information is there. The idea is that you have to take it through the same mixing bowl, the same blender, because it's land. The same way when someone opens up a new Walmart, or it's a new hardware store, it doesn't even matter, or it's a new Chipotle, or another Chick-fil-A, Lord help us. So I think that's the idea is taking off all the boxes of all the solves. What is the value proposition? What is it going to capture? Because the government always wants a better way to capture information, surveil. It doesn't mean it has to be used without our knowing. If all of that is then mixed into the configuration, then it has a greater long-term viability. It has more tracks of being able to monetize it back. It has greater sustained viability, and the human, the public can buy into its value proposition. And what I would say in summary is half of what I say is absent in the thinking and in the execution. And then they find out later when they literally scrap these shelters of the future, or they just turn it into relics for homeless to urinate on. That's part of the problem. I think you see in New York
It just becomes a net negative at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And look, human nature hasn't really changed that much in several thousands of years. It does the same thing. So I think the ambition is to study all this, bring in all the little data, little pieces of information, stitch it together, and then have a complex solve that ticks off a few boxes, because that has a 10, 20, 50-year trajectory. What you find is a lot of these ideas have a shelf life of 365 days, and then it's out, and then it's kind of left for dead. And then city municipalities get burned and say, okay, I don't know if we should be taking these kind of risks with these ad tech dudes, because they just got money to spend like kids with high-limit credit cards, but they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Let me pass it to Vivian.
I'm taking it, whether you're passing it or not.
Okay.
So I think what's important to remember when you're trying to figure out this mix is what problem does it solve for the city? That's the only way this shit's getting done. Honestly, you have to figure out what their issues are. Maybe it's sustainability is their big thing. Well, you better make sure there's a big solar panel on that. Maybe that mayor's big issue is he wants to make sure you have a clear sidewalk. Okay, we're going to make sure we have nicely parked. What is the problem that administration is trying to solve? How can you solve that problem? Make it easy for them so they can stand up and do a big press conference and say, look how I'm doing these great things for the city. And so how do you marry all that, put it in the blender, and come up with a solution that everyone can win?
You know, the one thing that people never think about is cities cost a lot of money to maintain, from grass to concrete to curbs. And when people install this stuff, they don't think about the long view. If it's going to stay, what is the maintenance for 2 decades, 3 decades?
That's a
Which
great
city
question.
understands very inherently.
And how the technology
Right.
changes.
So early startups don't even want to be around. They want to pump it, make the money. Half the founders fire sale out, they're gone. And I think that's the thing when you start to look at, when you look at a new roadway or a new street, and you're like, yeah, that was $20 million. Like $20 million for an intersection? Like, I think people just don't understand how much it costs to just break up concrete with a jackhammer,
Yeah.
and what that endeavor involves, and the degree of ambition it is employed in just doing it. And I think that's the other thing that a lot of startups have no consideration for, or just no understanding.
Let me bring it back to the social good part, and I have to thank Leo and Colin, and also John Walsh and Callahan Walsh, because this is one of the great prides of my life. I have to say that one of the reasons I'm so passionate about solving problems, right? The power, the water fountain of the future, which is free power for everybody. I still believe in free power for everybody. Was this, that when we got to do some social good, we started a partnership with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I got on a call with Callahan Walsh, and I thank Leo because I was like, Leo, I need a couple of ad slots for this, and he's like, yeah, do it. And I head of advertising, and we started putting the local zip code, the kids that went missing in that local zip code on those screens. It wasn't a kid from Washington D.C. It was a kid from a poor neighborhood in Miami, and technically, yeah, they're blurred out because some of these kids were found, but you know, they don't go missing like 2 states over. They go missing 2 blocks over. They're in somebody's apartment that they met online or a friend, and they're hiding. They don't necessarily get on an Amtrak train and go 7 states away. And we were able to recover some of these kids, and I'm very proud of that work. And this to me shows me what digital signage, the potential of advertising can do, what these screens, these smart screens can do. Not to show the kid from 5 states away, but to show the kid that just went missing today, in this moment. We have the ability to push that picture from a phone at a mall and get it all around the city before that kid leaves town and gets 5 counties away. So if we use the technology right, it can lead to some real good, and that just makes me super happy about what I do.
And I'll jump in as well and say, as I was working on our proposals and negotiations and discussions with cities, trying to talk about, bringing the value of what these could do, not only we have an orderly sidewalk, not only can local businesses and the Chamber of Commerce promote local restaurants and art galleries, but we could negotiate with our great partners, hey, let me get 20% of the screen time for city messages, whether in Miami it might be an impending hurricane, here's some instructions to follow. Maybe it was a missing child, maybe it was some local issue that the city wanted to make sure they were promoting. And so that was another great way of helping the city find a value, and they were going to be able to get something out of this, or an ad revenue, or whatever the case may be, but there was always finding out how we can bring this to the city and the people and the population in the area for it to have value is very, very important.
I like that. I like it because everything isn't about what is monetizable. So when you talk about basic public service, we all get Amber Alert buttons on our phone. We don't even know what to do. Like, we're supposed to get in the car, just start looking around, looking for a silver Tundra. I mean, but the idea is that signage, obviously run by city, state, government, so it's easy, they control it. It's a mechanism why they use it. I think entrepreneurs need to tap into the idea of the social good, because there are a series and litanies of things that can be communicated to the public on the spectrum, that if they reserve a piece of the inventory, then you can do it. Because look, if you're in an agency business, at some point you get a nonprofit client, you're begging media partners to broker for some value add for a nonprofit. Some of them have it built into their infrastructure, media platforms. A lot of them don't, because it's not the business that they are in. But you would get favor if that was the part of the business that you were in. Everybody's not going to take the Tom Shoes model of every shoe we pay, we dedicate to Africa because we're doing this in the third. But if they had that, then you tap into another conversation set. And I think what happens when people come to the table, you have to look at, well, who else can we bring to the table? Can we get some nonprofits? Can we get some charities? Can we get some this and this? Who's building the community? Who built this? Who's going to be here another 50 years? You give them some skin in it, and now they become a supportive base, and who knows, maybe they can have and offer some level of financing. Maybe it's not a straight rate card, but maybe it's on a donation basis. I think that there's a lack of just basic exploratory thinking and creativity to find out that there are multiple ways to get something not only funded and sustained, and that's not being brought to the conversation because it's so much of a silo of we just need to make money based off what we built, and we're just waiting for the checks to come in.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm consulting for a lot of companies who are trying to bring in different businesses and transportation focused for my work, and so I'm working with some micro transit companies, for instance. And so we have found in some areas that cities are just spending so much money on bus routes that sometimes they're running half full. So we can look at maybe doing an option where there you've got an example of a microtransit, a freebie or a circuit where you can have either on-demand service similar to a TNC, or you can have a fixed route. That's just one of the form factors there. Vans.
They will pick you up at your house.
They'll exactly. So depending on what the city is looking for, they have found in many cases they can change their mode for their bus route, have a more sustainable electric vehicle, and give people better service. In some cases, cities like the advertising. In some cases, they don't. It really depends. So it's about having that conversation, think outside the box. How can we solve problems and save money and bring people to the table to work together?
Yeah, and this kind of concludes the part where I came in, because now my vision has, the last few years has expanded. You won't believe how many people ask me for power. And let me go back to the payphone, right? You need power for everything. The power to move. Like I'm holding a battery, a ChargeFuze battery here. Every time I go to a bar or restaurant, I have two of them in my pockets, and there's always somebody that comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I get some juice? Can I get some power because I got to order a Lyft?" You need your phone for everything. City services, to order a car, to order food, to find your way around. We have made the mobile device an extension of ourselves. And power is freedom. So I believe that even the batteries and the power should be free, paid for by advertising. Clean water should be free, and that goes back to the next slide, which really is, Tim, I have a lot of questions for you on this, right? There's water filters, there's car charging, there's clean toilets, all of them being paid by advertising. Some of them are making a lot of money. You said earlier you don't think it's sustainable to run all of this, yet advertising out of home has gone up. There's more money being spent on advertising than ever before in the history of humanity. I mean, since at least that Roman
And
water
it's
fountain.
still not enough.
It's still not enough.
It's not enough relative to the global ad landscape. It's probably not enough to make all these things a viable, sustainable platform for connected cities. And that's when I think about future proofing, I really think about that is the revenue model. Hopefully it's contributed by advertising to some degree, but not dependent on. Because as soon as the ad buy shifts, the market changes, a new format comes along, a new network comes online.
But you still need a toilet.
What's that?
You still need a clean toilet.
Right.
You still need a clean toilet.
Yeah.
But coming back to the 3,400 really cool bus shelters in LA, how are we going to get them rolled out?
That is the question for the panel.
Yeah, you would almost have,
I don't have an answer for that. But
What are you doing here?
that's back to the point of like lots of cool ideas. It's all about execution. It's all about execution. There's